Hey everybody, Palantir just entered the Perfect Bullish Storm. I'm going to break it down for you. There are three different components. First of all, we got a volatility storm that just kicked in on October 27th. I'll walk you through that signal. Next, buy the rumor right ahead of earnings, which are right around the corner. The next, seasonality on the stock and the market. All three of those add up for a great opportunity to ride Palantir into the year end with some fantastic returns. We're talking about a $250 price tag on the stock on December 31st. I'm going to show you how to trade it, and I'm going to share a secret on how you can threefold those returns with a very simple strategy. Stick with me 10, 15 minutes or so. You're going to be a better investor for it. Let's go. All right, as I always say, let's jump into it right now. 10 minutes and you're going to know everything you need to know about Palantir and the three reasons behind it. I'll give it to you right up front with this screenshot. Market seasonality is number one. We just entered the most powerful seasonality period of the year. You're going to see some charts on that in just a second. Second, and this is most important, Palantir just triggered what I call a bullish volatility surge. Shares were set for this over the month of October as we saw a consolidation. You're going to see what happens, and it is very powerful, and it's why Palantir is heading towards 225, maybe even 250. You get the extra bump from that third little item there, and that is the pre and post earnings trade history on Palantir. I'm going to take you through the summary of what to expect before and after a buy the rumor rally is going to combine with this bullish volatility surge. I tell you, I'm calling it the perfect storm, and I'm not trying to be cheesy when I say it, but that's exactly the case here. Let's start to go through a little bit of the charts. I'm going to talk about seasonality for just a minute because it does matter. You've seen it, I've seen it, we've all seen it. The market slows down in September, and then October we usually see a surprise, right? That is followed by one of the most bullish periods, if not the most bullish period of the year. When we look at October, usually around the third week or so, and we're following this right now to a T, all the way into December when everybody starts to go away for the holidays. The market surge. Right now, look at the positive swings, and this is weekly S&P 500 returns over the last 20 years. Here's a little bit of what you see in September. This is back when we see week 9. That's a bad one back in March. But notice we've kind of got all of these negatives except for a couple little ones out of the way. Over 20-year average, this says the market is going to give us a nice tailwind. It doesn't matter whether you own Verizon, which has been down in the dumps, or Palantir. Everything's going to start to have a little bit of boats lifting in the harbor effect. When we look at the actual returns that we can expect on the S&P 500, it actually turns out to be 1.9% and 2.2% for the months of October and November. November being the second strongest right there along with April. This is why I've been increasing my positions on the bullish side of the market. Had a lot of hedges as we were heading into September. I think everybody knows that. I've slowly closed those out. And yeah, even on Archer and Joby Aviation, which we'll cover next week. So number one, we've got the market seasonality swinging the right way for Palantir. What comes up behind that? Well, it's Palantir seasonality as well. Look at this one. And this is the only reason I wanted to bring this up is because it is so profound. You've got an average of 45.9% return for Palantir in the month of November. Now, this is not 20 years worth of data. You only have 5 years worth of data on the stock. 60% of the time, that's obviously, we know 3 out of those 5 times we've seen the stock move higher. And if you want to look at the detail for this, you can see the strong performance. It came from 2023 and 2024. I want to remind everybody, Wall Street hates Palantir because of what happened in 2021 and 2022. You can see those returns way down at the bottom, and that is when the company missed their first couple of earnings reports and Wall Street soured on the stock, which is where they remain today. We'll talk about that in just a second as a further driver for what you're going to see on Palantir. So we've got the seasonality heading into place right now for Palantir and the market. What is a volatility surge? This is a simple concept, and I can give you a great example. Think of it when you're pushing a beach ball under the water or anything like that that's buoyant. And Palantir stock really is buoyant. It continues to go higher. Or you see what we call a healthy consolidation. That point where you push a ball down below the water and it pops up very quickly. That's one of those situations like this where you see the stock pulled down to a 50-day moving average, and it's just not going to stretch any further below, right? But in this case, what we saw for the month of October and a little bit of the end of September is just a healthy consolidation for Palantir shares right across. If I draw a line, that $180 price tag. Now, everybody knows that I am long Palantir, and I'm going to show you a way that you can leverage your returns. Let's call it out for the next 6 months or so in just a few minutes. But I am long the leaps for 2027, and I'm adding to those positions whenever I get a pullback like this. But a consolidation like this drives me nuts, except I know in Palantir's case, it usually results in one of these volatility surge, and it just got triggered. Look at that right-hand side of the chart, and that's the activity we've seen this week. Well, I wrote on MoneyMorning.com on the 27th that this was triggered, and let's look at the chart that came from that particular commentary. Check it out on MoneyMorning.com when you get a chance. It's a great read, but all of this is what plays into it. And relax. I'm going to walk you through this chart. It looks a little busy right now, and it is because there's a lot going on. But this is what drives a volatility surge. And in this case, it is bullish. Now, these pink lines that you see right here, those are called Bollinger Bands. And when a stock goes quiet the way that Palantir does, and again, I don't care if it's Verizon, I don't care if it's AT&T, McDonald's, Procter & Gamble. When stocks go quiet like this, they tend to set themselves up for that spring to explode. And it can either go lower or higher. Volatility is a trader's best friend. Investors hate it, but it's a trader's best friend. And in this case, it's going to ride the traders higher over the next 2 months. Let's look at this, though. That volatility right now, and this is the difference between the top Bollinger Band and the bottom Bollinger Band. So you're basically just measuring this spot right here between there and there. And when you look at this chart, this is the least volatile that we've seen Palantir in the last year. Let me repeat that because it's key. Volatility on Palantir stock over the last 30 plus days has been at its least than the last 1 year. Whenever you see a quiet period like this, and again, I don't care what stock it's on, you want to be eyeing it for another one of these volatility surges. And it comes down to simple math. Because we look at prices and we apply technical analysis and mathematical analysis on the market, anytime you see that get smashed down to where it's zero volatility, it's what we call unusual in the math world. Just like whenever we see these surges like this, where that volatility, those bands widen up, that's one of those points where we say this stock can't continue to go at this breakneck pace, right? So you expect to see a pullback. Well, the reverse is true. When it goes quiet, you expect to see one of these pops. Has this happened in Palantir's case? And I mentioned it was the quietest in a year, but what about recent activity here? Well, here are 3 different volatility surge signals that we've seen from Palantir just since August, and the stock has averaged 17% return after each one of these. And obviously we had a fantastic event right here where the stock actually rallied about 30%. When you look at all of these breaks of the Bollinger Bands and the volatility surges over the last 2 years, you're averaging returns of 22% over the next 10 to 20 days on the stock. Let me say it again, 22% on the stock, Palantir, over the next 10 to 20 trading days. 20 trading days are a month for those of you that are unfamiliar. So this carries us into the month of December. And if you remember that seasonality chart, it is an attractive month in November, 40+% returns. So we now have 2 things that are getting ready to drive Palantir much, much higher. We've got the seasonality that's in play right now and giving us those fantastic returns for November. December gets a little bit weak for Palantir, but you've got this volatility surge that is also here as well. The third thing that we're coming up to is November 3rd. You've got earnings coming out for Palantir. So just a few days away, and that's why I'm adding to positions ahead of the earnings report. Palantir has become famous now for not only beating, but giving us some good outlooks on the stock. And it's because their contracts with the government continue to expand, as well as what they're doing with the private sector, whether it be hospitals, whether it be businesses and such. They're getting out there there with that private business platform and really starting to grow revenue by signing those contracts. Don't expect that to end. We've not seen a plateau yet. All of the information that's coming out from the chips side of the AI technology, which is the motor, if you will, for AI, that has been strong and showing us that demand is very strong. I mean, Amazon's laying off 14,000 people because of what's going on with AI and how they're going to develop that and innovate moving forward. Palantir is just in the early stages of that. The result is that each one of these earnings results that we've seen here lately have come in strong with positive outlooks. Last quarter's was a little bit light. We got a little 8% jump off of the stock from that. Still, not a paltry move. I mean, it's a nice move for anybody, whether you're an investor in the stock or an options trader. When you look at the actual bottom line, 62% of the time the stock is higher over the following 2 weeks from their earnings season, their earnings report rather. And anytime, and this is literally any day you take it, you averaged 7.3% for that period. After those earnings, you're up 17%. So we can see that 8.3 was very lackluster last quarter. Expect the company to come in and give us an outlook on what they're going to be expecting in 2026, and that is going to help this stock to surge even higher. This covers what happens afterwards. But that volatility surge right now is also combining with what happens before the earnings. We're in that pre-earning stage with Palantir right now, and if you look, the last couple of quarters have just knocked the cover off the ball. 42%, 72%, 5.8% last quarter. Remember, everybody was looking at last quarter in August and saying, we're expecting a lot of volatility in September, and we don't think that Palantir is going to come out and do much of anything, and they didn't. They came out and they beat by 2 cents, and the company looked it forward and said, we're going to keep in line with what we've set our expectations at. Wall Street loved it because they hate this stock. But the pre-earnings right now, we also have this tail blowing at Palantir's back, and I'm counting on this to drive the stock another 10% higher ahead of that earnings announcement that's just right around the corner. So there are your three things right now. When you put them all together, it really does make for what I would call a perfect storm for Palantir. But as you know, I always like to look at what's going on with the open interest configuration. This gives us a roadmap of what the options market is expecting on Palantir. And the roadmap right now is very bullish. There's a little catch. And what you're looking at are the November expiration options. So the third Friday in November. And in this case, if we go and look at that chart, and I can pull that up here in just a matter of a minute, but if we go and look at that chart, here's a good one. You've got $180 has been that level that we consolidated across. Why 180? Normally $200 because it's round number, or maybe even you slip down to the 175 or the 160. 180's been strong in terms of that consolidation, containing that consolidation. Well, here is the reason why. When we look at the open interest configuration for those options right here, notice how you've got a little balance of power between the puts and the calls. The calls are the green columns, the puts are the red columns, right? These are where the options market is speculating the stock is going to go. You'll notice this large bar that's standing out at $195. As I look right now at Palantir's price, we're at $196.60. Expect to see this $195 try to slow the stock down, but if we get over that hump, if we move over that $195 strike and break that $200 strike, and heaven help us if we get a nice earnings report, that's where you're going to see a little mechanics on hedging those options start to kick in. Think of it as a short squeeze in ways. Everybody loves a good short squeeze on a stock. Well, guess what? Somebody sold those options to somebody that bought them, right? If you're long an option, you open it by buying it, right? Or you buy to open. Somebody sold to open that option, and they start worrying about the stock running away from them, and they turn into synthetic bulls on the stock, if you will. That's a mechanic we're not going to get into right now, but it's a really interesting aspect, and it matters on companies that are as widely traded as Palantir. Amazon, we've heard of pinning the strike. You'll try to see them pin that 195 to some degree, but at some point the options market will give up on that, as let's call it the stock, the volatility, the seasonality all take Palantir higher. What does all this mean for you, and how do you trade it? Let's run down through that. Here's my outlook. This is pretty standard for me right now in terms of my outlook on Palantir, and we've been nailing it. Strong seasonality for the market is going to fuel that volatility rally as well. Palantir shares are engaged in a buy the rumor rally. At the same time, you've got seasonality and that volatility surge signal that we saw on the 27th. I'm calling it the perfect bullish storm. Then any positive news from the earnings report are going to cause another round of buying, obviously, but more importantly, you're going to start to see Wall Street upgrades. I mentioned how Wall Street hates this stock every time, and we've seen 2 analysts upgrade it since the last earnings report. They have been looking at these earnings report and hoping that Alex Karp and Palantir at some point are going to stumble and miss those numbers so they can at least look like they're expecting the stock to start falling. That not being the case, you're going to start seeing them break their ranks, and all of those analysts that are out there with a hold on the stock and that have been that way since 2022, 2023 are going to start upgrading it. And guess what? When upgrades come down on stocks, whether they're price or just a recommendation on buy, hold, sell, it means that you're going to get more retail activity in this name. Right now, they're looking for that to happen after we cross above this 200, which is right around the corner. Right now, my year-end target, and keep in mind, year-end is just around the corner, 225 with a $250 stretch. I believe we could be there by December 31st, 2025. Your 12-month target takes you up to a $300 print, and that's with, I think, a little bit of headwinds that we see in the market in early 2026. Here's the thing you want to know. How do you trade this? How does CJ trade this? And I'm going to tell you, I am an owner of the stock. I also trade longer-term options. Why options? Because in this particular case, when I have such a strong trend on a stock, and it is with Palantir, I tend to go to leverage that over a longer period of time. I don't buy options that expire next week. I don't buy options that expire next month, not even in December. What you're going to find me buying right now are those April options on Palantir, and those are going to be considered short-term for me. I look at the 200 call, which is just slightly out of the money. You don't have to go for a moonshot here, folks. We're just trying to play a trend that is very strong. Right now, you pay $3,315 for that option. That's the price as of today. And when you look at it, my price target, if we go up to that $250, that puts me at $5,000 worth of intrinsic value on that option. It's the $250 minus the $200 on that strike price times 100, 50 times 100. I've made $5,000 or 50.8%. Same thing with the stock. It costs $19,700 to buy 100 shares right now. And if that goes up to that same $250 price tag, you've made a nice 26.9% on it. My multiple, though, is almost double in using that option. That is if we get to that third Friday in April, which is April 17th of 2026, and the stock is at $250. What if that happens before? What if that happens by December 31st, which is what I'm looking for right now? Well, now you have to get Black-Scholes involved and put together a theoretical value, because it's not just based on intrinsic value. It's based on how much that time premium is still valued at. And when we do that, and I did the math for you, put it into my Black-Scholes calculator, at $250 by December 31st, right now, 2025. That option that we bought for $33.15 is now worth $6,075. That takes me from 50% return up to 83.3% in about 2 months' time. Now, same thing with the stock. We get up to that $250, and I'm still at 26.9%. Now, that leverage is 3-to-1 for me. That's how you play these longer-term trends with those longer dated options. Again, you can try to catch lightning in a bottle here by trading an option that expires next week, 2 weeks from now. I tend to let those option trends play out for me. Give time, bring some time in, and make time your friend with that trend. And that's how you start to make these somewhat aggressive trades on the stock into even better leverage trades using long dated options. That is it. I always like to remember everybody, make sure you check out the disclosures there on options trading. They're not for everyone. You can limit what you are putting down on a stock, so limit your loss. But in some cases, the volatility is too much. And yeah, if you buy options the incorrect way, there are some risks that are non-existent with stocks. So I always tell everybody, make sure you get educated and you get a basic knowledge of options trading before you begin. But I encourage you to do that. That is it. A great story right now for Palantir. The stock is not only hitting seasonal strength, but also a volatility surge and a little buy the rumor, which is also going to be followed by a buy the news after that earnings report, which is right around the corner. Use this. Again, I hope you're a wiser trader. Make sure you keep checking back here for more information. Palantir, Archer Aviation, Rigetti Computing, we cover them all, and I like to break them down so I can educate you along the way. I'm Chris Johnson with Money Morning, wishing you the best trading success. Have a great day.